When you think about life insurance, you probably hear that old rule of thumb, right? Just, take your income, multiply it by 10, and you're done.
Right. Sounds so simple.
But that calculation is, frankly, it's just obsolete. Real life is so much messier. You've got blended families, ex-spouses who need support, career changes, maybe you own a business.
Exactly. The modern family's financial blueprint is incredibly complex. And that simple formula, it assumes a stability that it rarely exists anymore. This is really the leading cause of catastrophic underinsurance.
So for this deep dive, we're going to cut right through all that guesswork. We're diving into the source material that financial pros actually use to build a real needs analysis. Our whole mission here is to give you that same structured framework.
So you can identify all the potential risks.
Exactly. We're not just looking at who needs the money, but the very specific, some of the legally mandated reason why.
And as we go, it's helpful to keep three key roles in mind. There's the policyholder, who pays the bills. There's the life insured, whose death, triggers the payout.
And then the beneficiary, the person who gets the money.
That's the one. The entire process, everything we're about to discuss, it all works backward from the financial needs of that beneficiary.
Okay, let's ground this right away with a real-world scenario. We're going to use this case study of a couple, Derek and Becky.
Okay.
Derek is 47. He's a VP. Becky is 38, currently a stay-at-home parent. And their family is the definition of modern complexity. Derek has a son, Jordan, who's 8, from his previous marriage.
Right, so there's an ex-spouse involved.
Exactly. Becky has a daughter, Anya, she's 4, whom Derek adopted. And they just had a new baby, Robbie, who's only 2 months old. They're worried about what happens if Derek, the main earner, dies suddenly.
And that situation, it just perfectly demonstrates why this has to be about holistic risk management. If you're going through any major life change, marriage, divorce, a new kid, a career shift, you have to understand these categories to get it right.
Okay, let's start unpacking it. The first pillar here has to be assessing those complex family dynamics. I mean, who is actually financially dependent on Derek today?
Well, it starts with the current spouse, Becky. In a single income household like theirs, losing Derek's income, which is $8,400 a month take home, is immediately devastating.
Devastating. And Becky's been out of the workforce for a while, so her skills might be a bit
rusty, yeah, making it really hard to just jump back in.
And their future plans are so central here. Becky's thinking maybe in 6 years she can go back to HR, earn maybe $4,500 a month. But Derek has a very clear priority.
Precisely. And this is where the planning becomes critical. Derek's goal is to make sure Becky doesn't have to go back to work until Robbie, the baby, is 18.
18, wow.
Yeah. That single preference, that goal, extends the income replacement period from maybe 10 years to nearly 2 decades. It can almost double the amount of insurance they need.
Wait, is insuring for 18 years that standard? I feel like most people aim for 10 years and just hope for the best.
That's a great question because it really gets to the heart of risk tolerance. A lot of advisors do start with a 10-year period. But for Derek and Becky, with a spouse out of the workforce and 3 very young kids, their financial risk is high and their flexibility is really low.
So it's about being safer.
It's the safer planning choice, yes. More expensive, but safer.
And we also have to flip the coin here and talk about the caregiver trap. We're focused on Derek's income, but what if Becky died? Derek doesn't lose a paycheck, but he suddenly has to pay for full-time childcare for 3 kids just to keep his own job. The analysis has to account for that, right? The cost of replacing her services.
A completely different but equally valid financial risk. It means she needs coverage on her life, too. Now, let's move outside the current home to support obligations. Ex-spouses, kids from prior relationships.
These are the legal commitments.
Legal, court-mandated commitments. They don't just disappear if you die.
So in Derek's case, he's paying his ex-wife, Susan, $500 a month in spousal support.
And that continues until she's 65 or remarries. It's a binding legal obligation that has to be funded, even if he passes away tomorrow.
And then there's child support for Jordan. That's another $1,000 a month.
Right, until Jordan turns 19. If Derek dies, Jordan still needs that support. It doesn't just stop.
This brings up such a critical point for anyone going through a divorce. The court orders often stipulate this. They require you to get life insurance to cover those obligations, and you have to name the ex-spouse or a trust as the beneficiary.
It's not optional. It's a legal safeguard written right into the agreement.
Okay, so last part of the family pillar.
Yeah.
The minor children and other long-term dependents. Derek obviously wants living expenses covered for all 3 kids, Jordan, Anya, and Robbie, but also wants to fund their college education.
Right, which requires a separate pretty substantial lump sum to be set aside for future tuition.
But the word dependent can mean so much more. Let's look at Derek's nephew, Chase. Case is 8. He has a severe developmental disability, but a normal life expectancy.
So his parents, Peter and Janine, aren't planning for 10 or 20 years of income replacement.
No, they need funding for 50, maybe 60 years of lifelong, complex care.
That completely changes the goal of the insurance. It's not about replacing a paycheck anymore. It's about creating a kind of endowment that can generate income for decades to cover care. And, the same logic applies to aging parents if you're supporting them financially.
That just proves the financial map of dependency is way bigger than just the people under your own roof. Okay, let's pivot. Let's talk about the second major pillar, analyzing income and employment. This isn't just the paycheck. It's future potential and, so critically, lost benefits.
For an employee like Derek, we start with income replacement. But we always use the take-home pay, the actual $8,400 that hits the bank after taxes and all the deductions.
Because that's the real spending power the family loses.
That's the number, exactly.
And the plan has to be dynamic, right? Derek's expecting a promotion to COO in a couple of years. His pay will jump to, what, $9,500 a month plus bigger bonuses?
Yeah.
Which suggests he needs a policy that lets him increase his coverage later without having to go through a whole new medical exam and underwriting process.
And you weigh that against Becky's situation. She's worried her tech skills are outdated, so her return to work might be tougher than she thinks.
That vulnerability just makes replacing Derek's income even more non-negotiable if he dies.
Now, here's the huge blind spot people always miss: the hidden cost of losing group benefits. Everyone focuses on the salary, but losing the health and dental plan, that can be a massive, immediate financial strain.
It's a huge factor for Derek and Becky. I mean, with 3 young kids, their medical and dental bills are already significant. But it gets more specific. Becky relies on Derek's plan for custom orthotics and regular physiotherapy for her arthritis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That coverage stops the day he dies. So Becky then has to choose, pay hundreds of dollars a month out of pocket for necessary care or just not get it, which then impacts her quality of life and her ability to work later.
So now we're not just replacing a salary, we're covering essential medical costs. Okay, let's shift from cash flow issues to liquidity risks. And for that, we have to look at the business owner's tax trap, using Derek's siblings as examples.
This is where things get really complicated. For business owners, loss of income is often secondary to the massive tax bill that gets triggered by death.
Okay, so let's start with his brother, Peter. He's a sole proprietor.
Right. Simple case. Peter earns about $105,000 net income. If he dies, the income stops. Big cash flow problem for the family. But his business assets are minimal, so the tax hit is pretty low. The goal there is pure income replacement.
Now contrast that with his other brother, Mark. Mark owns 50% of a successful partnership. He's making $140,000 a year. Now, a partnership interest is treated differently by the tax man than corporate shares.
And this is the trap. The crucial detail is something called the Lifetime Capital Gains Exemption, or LCGE. It's a huge tax break, about $1.25 million in 2024, that lets owners sell qualified small business shares tax-free up to that limit.
But partnerships don't qualify.
Generally, no, they do not. So when Mark dies, the value of his partnership interest gets realized, and because he can't use the LCG to shield it, he's facing a massive taxable capital gain.
A profit that's now taxable. How much are we talking about?
He anticipates a staggering $400,000 taxable capital gain at his death, and that tax has to be paid by his estate within 6 months. If he doesn't have insurance specifically for that, they'll have to sell other assets, eroding the inheritance for his wife, Michelle.
So the insurance here isn't replacing his income. It's literally just to pay the tax bill.
It's paying the government. That's its only job.
And the complexity just peaks with Derek's sister, Kimberly. She co-owns a corporation. She takes a salary of $180,000 and $50,000 in dividends.
Mm-hmm.
So the family loses both of those streams, but the real monster here is the corporate ownership and this rule called deemed disposition.
Deemed disposition. It's a legal fiction, basically. The law says you sold all of your assets, including your corporate shares, the second before you died.
Which triggers an immediate capital gain.
Yeah.
An immediate tax bill.
Exactly. Now, because Kimberly owns corporate shares, she can use the LCGE, that $1.25 million exemption. But her business has grown so much that it might not be enough.
So her shares are worth more than the exemption.
That's it. Even after claiming the full $1.25 million LCGE, she still expects to have an unsheltered taxable capital gain of $500,000. So she needs insurance just to fund that $500,000 tax bill. It preserves the value of the business for her family.
And her situation brings up one final, really distinct need, a contractual one. She and her co-owner, Janet, have a buy-sell agreement.
Right. A critical piece of business planning.
It says that if one of them dies, the survivor has to buy the deceased shares for a set price, which is $2 million.
This is pure risk management for the business itself. The agreement requires Kimberly to buy a $2 million policy on Janet's life, and Janet to do the same for Kimberly. This insurance has nothing to do with salary or family bills. It exists for one reason only.
To fund the stock purchase.
To fund the stock purchase and ensure a smooth transition for the business.
It's just incredible. When you lay it all out, the sheer breadth of factors. I mean, we've covered dependents from infants to disabled adults, lost medical benefits, fluctuating salaries, and these massive, totally different tax burdens for different business structures.
And if we synthesize this all back to our original couple, Derek and Becky, Derek needs coverage for at least 5 distinct purposes. Spousal income replacement until Robbie is 18.
Right.
Ongoing child support for Jordan, spousal support for Susan, the college fund for all 3 kids, and then a fund to cover the loss of those group medical benefits. It's a plan that has to work for the next 18 years.
And then you have to subtract any offsets, right? If Derek had, say, a defined benefit pension plan, the survivor benefits from that, or even government benefits, would reduce the total amount of insurance needed. You don't want to overinsure.
That's a key final step. But if you look at Mark and Kimberly, it's just so clear. The $400,000 policy for Mark's tax bill, the $2 million policy for Kimberly's buy-sell, those have nothing to do with replacing income.
Nothing at all. They are purely driven by the need to fund a non-negotiable legal or tax obligation. So what does this all mean for you listening? I think the needs analysis starts with that emotional question, how much income does my family lose?
It does. But the professional analysis shifts very quickly to what legal or tax liability must be funded immediately upon my death.
And that raises an important final question for you to really think about.
Yeah.
Is your current insurance designed just to replace your lost income? Or is it actually structured to fund your hidden legal and tax obligations?
Because that distinction, it changes the entire conversation.
It really does. So take a critical look at your own complex financial map using these categories. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.